Excellent. Well, hey, aloha and hola to some of you and hello to others. Great to have you on the panel today. Today we're going to be covering island resiliency and talking about energy storage systems and different methodologies of how we finance them to help our island nations be much more resilient than what they are today. And boy, do we ever have an action-packed group of people today on this panel. It's actually quite impressive. But I thought before I get into all the introductions, you guys can kind of hear the DNA. And so Sandra, Kwak, Sandra, you've got a little ukulele or something there. Would you mind just opening this thing up with the sounds of the island? Go for it, sis.
Sure thing. Don't worry about the things set for climate change, because every little thing is gonna be all right if we invest in renewable energy. Don't worry about a thing, because every little thing is gonna be all right.
Yes. Oh, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for doing that. Isn't that a great way to start a panel? I think what we need to do, Sandra, every time we speak on a panel, you just come with this, okay? Let's just do this thing. So
All right, my pleasure.
That was beautiful. Excellent. Well, hey, again, aloha, and just want to welcome everybody here to the panel today. Just a couple of housekeeping items. We're going to be running a poll here today. And so the poll allows us to learn a little bit more about you. Hey, where are you from? And what sector best describes you? So please click those in there. It would be awesome to have it there. Look at that. I got people saying aloha, hola. I love this. Hey, PJ, good to see you guys. So what a blessing it is. So this panel today, it brings together stakeholders from Hawaii. We have folks from Puerto Rico. And we're going to discuss the efforts to create a cleaner and more resilient electrical systems. Both regions face considerable threats from natural hazards, with Puerto Rico, as many of you know, still recovering from the devastating impacts of Hurricane Maria. And so this discussion is going to bring together all the stakeholders and to share how these different islands, how they're prepping and preparing and designing energy systems and electrical systems for the future to be a bit more resilient. And so to start off, I'll just introduce myself really quick. My name is Gregg Murphy. I'm the moderator today. I've been in the renewable energy since the mid-90s, started in off-grid energy storage, and have just been having a blast since then. So, but you don't want to hear about me. We want to really talk to these experts we have on the panel today, which I'm really excited about. So the first one there, oh, I'm starting to see the poll come through. Look at that. We got about 48% of the people from the Caribbean. Please, on these polls, check in there as well. And then also on the bottom, we have a question and answer. So the things that are going to be discussed today, you guys are going to love it. And so please, on that question answer, type in your questions for the panel, or maybe just questions you have that you would like us to answer, and we will jump right on those as well. So please take advantage of that as much as you possibly can. We'll be looking at the chat window there as well. But today we're going to be talking Christopher Johnson. Christopher is the COO of Blue Planet Energy, and he's led the team's expansion and smooth growth of the company. For over 20 years, Christopher's built an extensive background in both science and sustainability, which fuels his passions to lead teams to create positive impact in the world. Christopher has been recognized as a Titan of Tech by the Public PBN and the Thomas J. Watson Fellow, and a Global Social Benefit Accelerator Fellow at the Miller Center. All around rock star that guy is. So Christopher is going to talk with us here in a second. And then we also have Sandra Kwak. Now, Sandra is gifted with incredible musical talents, and she just exudes aloha. And so Sandra is the founder and CEO of 10 Power, an organization that works together with local partners to develop and finance commercial scale solar projects in Haiti, making renewable energy affordable and accessible for tangible improvements in livelihood and prosperity. She has previously served as COO and president of PowerZoa and scaled AutoGrid from prototype to a global brand. So when I said rock star, you know what I mean. So we get really stoked to hear from her. And then also on the panel is Gabriel Perez. And so Gabriel Perez, or Gaby as we call him, he runs operations and sales there in Puerto Rico for Blue Planet Energy. He's a native to the island of Puerto Rico. And Gaby has experienced the disaster of Hurricane Maria and all the recovery efforts. He was on the ground. He's really been pivotal in making the transition of that island. And so you're going to have great news from him. And he's played, again, a major role in building the island with his charisma, leadership, and knowledge. He also serves on Economies there as well. So it's great to have him. And I want to wrap this thing up with Justin Locke. If you guys haven't met him, get ready. You're about ready to meet just a guy who's just also a titan in the industry here. Justin Locke is the senior director at Rocky Mountain Institute, and RMI is empowering clean economies program. That's what he does. And he's also the senior lead for the island's energy program. He's previously held the position of infrastructure disaster risk management specialist at the World Bank, where he managed the Caribbean adaptation and infrastructure portfolio. So I would say with the people we have on this task force are well equipped to talk about what's happening in the islands and the innovation that is yet to come. So so before we jump into it, Chris, I want you to get ready. Christopher's going to share a little bit, do an introduction into what he's doing with Blue Planet Energy, and then Sandra and Gaby as well. And if you guys have questions about things they're saying, please use that question and answer form there. And also on the polls, please jump on the polls so we know a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and also what sector you're from that best describes you. From academia, you're from the utility, NGO, other, you can make something up, but it'd be great to know who we're talking to and who's on the panel here today. But Christopher, brother, are you ready to jump in there and share a bit about what's going on Blue Planet Energy?
I am, Gregg. Thank you. I'll go ahead and share my screen. We get a little bit of the visuals as well. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and thank you, James and your team, for putting together this awesome event and for having us here. And as Gregg said, I'm with Blue Planet Energy. We are a Hawaii-based company, and we have been put on a path, the mission from our founder to end the use of carbon-based fuels. That's a big mission, and Hank, who you see here shaking hands with the governor of Hawaii, is really a big picture and big thinker. And so Hawaii faces some of the same issues that many island communities have, in the sense that Hawaii has the most expensive electricity in the US, and also abundant renewable resources, plenty of sunshine. And so it's a great place to be able to launch into renewable energies. And Hank started the Blue Planet Foundation, totally separate entity from Blue Planet Energy, but of course we share that mission over 10 years ago to put in place policies to support renewable energy. And so that got Hawaii to be the first state to commit to 100% clean energy by 2045. And they really thought about it from the perspective of Hawaii is in the middle of the ocean, long way from everywhere, and most of the electricity is coming by burning fossil fuels. 70% is just from burning oil. And that oil all has to be brought in by boat. It's very expensive, and that leads to some of our, those expensive electricity costs. And in the process of having such an expensive electricity, it actually holds back the economic growth and opportunities in the islands as well. And so it seems like a perfect opportunity. Okay, let's figure this out. We don't have to worry about the complexity of large grids like California and all the interconnections that are happening with other states. We're literally islands. They're totally islanded. Let's figure this out here and figure out how to replicate this in other places. And so Hank put us on this, Hank really put us on this path, both on the policy front, but also in founding the company. Oops, sorry, there we go. So Hawaii actually has a fairly similar energy source mix to Puerto Rico, which is another place we do a lot of our work. But for all of that oil that's brought into the state, we export over $1.3 billion every year. That's just money flowing out of the economy, not providing any local benefit. And some of the work that's been done in looking at the policies around this renewable energy mandate that we have to hit 100% clean energy by 2045, there was a study that was done to look at, okay, well, the policy says that we should accelerate our adoption. So so you can see this blue curve here on the right, which sort of says, okay, we're going to do more adoption towards the end. But what the study found was that we could actually save $7 billion in this process if we adopt faster. And that's because a lot of the technologies are readily available to get us further along this curve of getting to renewable energy faster. And so, so now we're pushing for how can we do this even faster? Now, one of the things that we see in renewable energy is it's not just enough to think about renewables, putting more solar. Solar's, I think that some of the easy things for us to point to as a solution here. And what we saw and when we were initially working in Puerto Rico, and Gaby will talk some more about this as well, is there was 10,000 rooftop solar installations in Puerto Rico when Hurricane Maria hit. But when the grid went down, none of those solar systems were producing any electricity. So we also need to introduce not just renewables, but also resilience. And so, so across the planet, we're seeing the need to replace fossil fuels. This is an opportunity for our local economic development and empowerment. Energy storage, which is what Blue Planet Energy is dedicated to, is a way that you can stabilize those renewable resources. And it provides both climate adaptation as well as climate mitigation. So enabling more renewables to be adopted and creating resilience. So, and in several areas, we also see grid breakdown. I'm actually calling in from California today, where the PG&E, the largest utility in the state, is shutting down power to over 1.5 million people today. And we don't know when they'll be turning it back on. So the grid is actually having challenges, and it's very expensive to invest in that grid. And so actually distributed energy resources, which renewables with energy storage represent, can be cheaper solutions. We also see climate events causing the need for additional resilience, and especially for our critical infrastructure. And we're also seeing in the island nations that we're working in, a lot of these generator-based grids have incredibly high costs of energy. And so renewables can provide an excellent opportunity to replace those dependence on foreign oil, as well as to lower cost of living. So one of the things that we like to provide some education about as well is people think about, okay, great, batteries. And people think about the cost curve that solar has, and solar's come down dramatically in price over the years. But that cost curve for solar is about 40 years in the making. Lithium-ion batteries are actually fairly new, and they're only about a decade into that cost curve. So they are coming down in price, but we run the risk of sacrificing safety for this chasing the lowest cost in the market. And so we look to markets like South Korea, where there has been large government incentives for adoption of energy storage. And they're actually starting to experience a large amount of fires from it at the batteries, causing millions of dollars of loss. And this has led to the actual having to shut down the battery operations at many of these sites. And so, so an important thing to think about with the batteries, I'm sure everybody's heard about the Samsung Notes that you can't take on airplanes, or the hoverboards that were catching on fire. That's kind of got some of the same elements that are causing challenges that we're seeing in these fires in Korea. And so when you see cobalt or nickel in those batteries, those are potentially dangerous chemicals that have the properties that can lead to thermal runaway in batteries. So when we think about resilience, we don't want the batteries to be part of a problem, right? Because when resilience is really, especially energy resilience, is the ability to prepare for and also to recover from disruptions that we have. And so that can be natural or natural disasters, or cyber attacks, or any of those things. So when we look at this, and you'll see here on the right, the photo from an installation where we've got a system that can completely island itself from the grid. This is actually a grid-tied system. And so I love that we're in our island summit here, and we get to talk about energy systems that can island themselves. That's how we explain microgrids. But essentially, you create your own little independent energy universe. And so this is a key piece that we're seeing that even today, 2 years after we've started work in Puerto Rico, many of critical infrastructure places don't have that resilience. And today in California, we're going to see really the impact of that being really behind in adoption, even in one of the richest economies in the U.S. So our company is a mission-driven company, and we set out to make the most durable, safest, and scalable energy storage system. And we have been focused on microgrids for critical infrastructure because we can provide both the resilience and the renewable energy. So we think that brings us along our mission of delivering, of reducing our dependence on fossil fuel. And hopefully what you experience with our team is that culture of Aloha. And we like to say that both our products and our team are powered by Aloha. So just a quick glimpse of our product, and then I'll pass it back to Gregg to continue on our conversation here. So our Blue Ion is our brand of our product. This is our Blue Ion 2.0. It's been in the market for almost 3 years now, which is built on a chemistry of iron phosphate. So lithium iron phosphate. It does not have the risk of thermal runaway or the fires or explosions that you see in some of the NMC chemistries. It's a and partially that's because the chemistry is very robust, which gives us a long lifetime, so we can provide a 15-year performance warranty on this system. It also means you can use these batteries very intensely, so drain them down 100% and charge them back up 100% every day. And so that's one reason we've had such success starting with the off-grid markets and remote and grid edge markets, is that customers want something that lasts a long time. You're not going to damage the battery if you over discharge it a little bit, and is also safe. So we are proud of this work and the work we've done, and I hope you get to see some more of that from some of the other stories we share, and I'd be happy to answer any of the questions coming up. And again, thank you all for your participation today.
Fantastic,
All right, Gregg.
Yeah, fantastic, my friend. Well done, well done. That's really interesting to see that you've got island nations helping other island nations. It's a beautiful thing seeing Hawaii pouring out into places like Puerto Rico and other places like that. So wonderful things. Hey, by the way, if Christopher, if you have questions for Christopher specifically that you'd like him to address and to talk more about, jump down there on the question and answer tab and go ahead and type in your questions, and we'll go ahead and answer those as best we can there. So bring those in. And just seeing people from all over the place here on different islands, guys. Thank you for your chatting and keeping things moving ahead here. I want to introduce our next speaker here with Sandra. So again, Sandra, I've already introduced you a bit, but would you, your voice, your singing, it's amazing. Jump in there. Tell us a bit about what you do, who you are, and what your heart is for the island nations. Go for it.
Thanks, Gregg. So my company is called 10 Power, and we are working in Haiti, which is the first market that we've chosen to tackle. The mission of 10 Power is to bring renewable energy to places that don't have access to electricity today. And so we are working on commercial and industrial scale solar right now, bringing finance and project development to help get projects off the ground and create clean energy economies in places with high energy poverty. All right, can y'all see my slides here? Excellent. So 10 Power's mission is threefold. We bring project development, so expertise in international codes and standards and engineering expertise for capacity building. We also source finance for projects, and we work very directly with local installers and help create local ecosystems with training programs. Energy, as all of us know, is basically the key to creating improvements in livelihoods and prosperity, from having access to clean drinking water to access to global markets, gender empowerment, education. It touches our lives in every single way. It's what's powering all of us to be here today in this amazing virtual summit not having to expend carbon dioxide emissions on flights to have this wonderful convening. So as you think about how solar and renewable energy can lift billions of lives across the planet, 10 Power is really focused not just on energy, but also on the productive uses of that energy and making sure that it's integrated in a regenerative way into the community to help lift all boats. So the case in Haiti is probably very similar to the case on a lot of islands where there's an unreliable utility. And so all businesses have to use diesel generators. In Haiti, there are blackouts every single day. And depending on how far away you are from Port-au-Prince, sometimes you can go days or weeks at a time without electricity, which I'm here in California right now, which may be kind of the up and coming situation for California as well. So these diesel generators, similar to the situation that Chris described in Hawaii, and probably similar to a lot of situations that you've seen on island nations, all of that diesel is imported, and it's very costly. The price of electricity drives up the cost of everything else. And it's not only the price of diesel, it's also the operations and maintenance on the diesel generator. And then of course, there's the societal costs of the emissions that are going into the atmosphere, both direct health impacts on lung health, asthma, links to lung cancer, as well as the larger global issue of climate change, which is especially impacting people on the front lines and most drastically impacting those who had the least to do with creating the conditions for climate change. Now, Haiti has a potential massive market for renewable energy. There's both high return on investment as well as high social return on investment, SROI. My father is from South Korea, and when he was a little boy, South Korea was one of the poorest countries on the entire planet. And if you look at South Korea today, they're a global brands leader. They have major companies like Samsung, largest shipbuilding port in the world, and they're also investing in a lot of green infrastructure. So I see the potential for places like Haiti, which is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere and the 7th poorest country on the planet, to really within one generation, similar to what South Korea did, become a world leader in renewable energy, in regenerative best practices. And I see this potential for a lot of fringe and emerging economies across the world. So 10 Power is currently spec'd the size of the commercial and industrial solar market in Haiti at 675 million. We have in our pipeline of interested customers over 100 million in potential sales. And it's not just about the sales, of course, it's about preserving the amazing environment that Haiti has, the mountains, the beaches, and also empowering every single individual and enabling them to reach their highest potential. Now, many of y'all have probably seen in the news that Haiti is under extreme pressure right now. There is a great deal of political and economic instability going on. And when you look at the reliance that the Haitian economy has had on imported fossil fuels and the reliance that all of our economies, that the global economy has on fossil fuels in general, Haiti is kind of like the canary in the mine shaft. This is what happens when your entire economy is completely reliant on fossil fuels. Basically, since the collapse of Petrocaribe, where Venezuela was providing subsidized energy to the Caribbean region, when that subsidy went away, Haiti's government took on the subsidy. And so what we've seen is that international lenders have told the government that they can no longer provide the subsidy, that they need to raise oil prices to the market rates. And the population cannot bear it because so many people are already living below the poverty line. The majority of the population lives on less than $2.40 per day. Energy increases the price of everything. And so really the population is at a breaking point. Every time the government has tried to raise the price of fuel, there have been massive protests. There's been investigations into Petrocaribe corruption, and now the entire country is calling for the removal of the president and the administration. And so in this case, it's crucial for us to build a renewable energy market. Solar can really solve a lot of these problems by reducing the reliance on imported fossil fuels while simultaneously strengthening Haiti's local economy and businesses and their ability to create jobs. But the question is, how do you scale in a market that's so high risk? And I really see it as the job of both development banks as well as potentially philanthropic capital. So 10 Power is creating a market mechanism for philanthropic donors to be able to put money into for-profit social impact enterprises to be able to create a pool of concessionary capital to help underwrite this risk. And I'm happy to get into that more if there are questions about it. We recently completed a project on UNICEF Haiti's headquarters. This was a 130 kilowatt energy storage and solar combination project. This is actually the largest solar installation on any UNICEF base in the entire world. So a reason for celebration, and this fits in with my belief of fourth world nation building, which I have a TED talk on, which is that places like Haiti can really lead the way, because we don't already have all of this entrenched infrastructure that we have to retrofit there. Haiti can take the best of breed technologies and implement them immediately. And so hopefully in 5 or 10 years, we'll see the places that maybe today were considered the least developed really leading the charge in terms of renewable energy innovation. So this UNICEF project fits in with multiple UN Sustainable Development Goals, which are really core to 10 Powers activities. I'll highlight a few, namely no poverty, gender equality, renewable energy access for all, and climate change are what we're working on. And the global goals are really a great framework from both an impact perspective and charting your impact, as well as an impact investing perspective. With the UNICEF program, we launched a training for women solar installers in partnership with Haiti Tech University, which is one of the leading technical universities in Haiti. We're working on capacity building, so all of the solar installers on our teams are trained in OSHA, safety, and we make sure that they're improving their capacity for solar installation engineering. And it's our larger goal to build a clean energy economy in Haiti and bring this model to other places across the world that are suffering from energy poverty today. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Sandra. And a question came in that I wanted to ask you. So you talk about fourth world. Can you share a little bit more what you mean by that?
Sure, thanks. So I think we're actually doing development backwards. So we have this false duality between developed and developing countries, first world and third world countries. But if all 7.8 billion humans that live on the planet today had an American's, a US citizen's footprint, then we would need 5 to 8 planet Earths, which just simply is not feasible from a resource perspective. And so what I think we should be doing is doing development the other way, just like tech, which goes 3.0, 4.0, 5.0. So maybe it's the countries that we today consider third world or least developed countries that will be leading the charge in becoming fourth world countries and fifth world countries. And there's actually a World Economic Forum paper that was published 2 years ago called the Fifth Industrial Revolution, which speaks to data informatics, machine learning, big data, renewable energy. And basically, if we can have a combination of these cutting edge technologies, and we use those to improve quality of life, but we're doing so powered by renewable energy with buildings that generate food and excess oxygen, where we're creating pathways to prosperity for everyone beyond Leapfrog. So Leapfrog connotes that we're on this trajectory where first you exploit your human resources, then you exploit your natural resources, then you pave over everything. Everybody has a house with 2 garages, 3 cars, and lives in the suburbs. Then you can start to care about carbon dioxide emissions. And going from A to C or A to D along that trajectory is just leading to the same exact problems that we are already living in. So I see this as quantum development. Instead of going from A to C, let's go from A to theta times 9,000 in a completely new trajectory for human evolution. And I really think that frontline communities are going to be the ones who are leading this charge and who are going to be quickly adopting existing innovations and creating new innovations that all of a sudden US utilities are going to wake up 5 years from now and say, hey, what is Curacao doing? What is Hawaii doing? What is Haiti doing? What are the Philippines doing? And bring those innovations back to figure out how to deal with all of these renewable energy distributed nodes. And so that's what fourth world and fifth world developments is all about.
Fantastic. That's great insight to that as well. Chris Smedley also mentioned that you're connecting on Leapfrog. He said how that is such a key component to exponential growth in technology. Can you speak on that a little bit more of how that will help there?
Yeah. So I really, from a human development perspective, I think that we are basically cheating ourselves if we're not providing electricity to every single person on the planet. Because the next Albert Einstein or Steve Jobs could be a little girl at the end of a dirt road who today doesn't have access to electricity and has to carry water on her head for 5 hours per day. And so in innovating our way out of climate change, if we're providing access to electricity and the mother brain of humanity, the internet, where everyone can download information and upload information, and these kids who are the future geniuses, you know, inventors, all have access to the same resources that we get to enjoy in places like California, then I think that we're really going to see the innovation on a rapid scale that we need to invent our way out of climate change. And I'll put a link to my TED Talk in the chat if people are interested.
Please do. It's a very valuable talk there. So appreciate that, Sandra. And I've got a couple other questions, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold those so that we can get through some of the other conversations. But people are wondering, how are we going to deal with financing in Haiti and all these things? But before we jump into that, Sandra, I want to just say mahalo nui loa for sharing that. And I want to jump now into Gaby or Perez. Gaby, my brother, share with us what you see. What was Puerto Rico like before Hurricane Maria? What's it like now? And kind of your vision on what you're seeing happening there, brother. Go for it.
Well, thank you, Gregg, and thank you for the opportunity to be part of this sensational panel. So I'm from Puerto Rico. I'm a native from Puerto Rico. For the people that don't know, Puerto Rico is a small island in the Caribbean. We're neighbors of Haiti, Dominican Republic, Cuba, and the Virgin Islands. We're part of the U.S., but we're not a statehood. So it's a lot of people think that we're a state and we're part of them, but we're really part independent, part of the U.S. So just to give a briefing on Puerto Rico, before the hurricane, Puerto Rico has been passing a tough economic crisis. We're talking about, we have been in a depression, economic depression since 2008. And we're currently right now, Puerto Rico right now, it's in the federal courthouse in bankruptcy. Also the utility, the public utility, the only one that we have, it's also bankrupt. It's called PREPA. So we have been tough times in workforce part, in the economic part. A lot of people have gone off the island even before the hurricane, looking for other opportunities in the US. I currently have 2 brothers of mine that have moved to the US to find more stability and work. So then the hurricane hit us 2 years, it's 2 years and a month now. Hurricane Maria hit us and we were hit by Hurricane Maria, and then we had we had another hurricane. So that hurricane category 4 hit us. Really, we were not prepared. You know, we're talking about an island that is bankrupt. The infrastructure has not been stable, and it just crushed the island. It crushed the island, and personally, a humanitarian crisis, I lived that. We didn't have water, we didn't have power, internet. It was difficult to get the gas stations. We were talking about 5 hours to 10 hours lines to get gasoline. I even didn't saw my mother for 3 weeks. I didn't even knew if she was alive. So it was very tough for us in the island during that period. But from bad things, good things happen. The island, especially the non-for-profits and the communities have joined in and have rised, and they're looking for options to be better and to next time to be prepared. Okay, so a couple of things that happened, and non-for-profits. Here you can see a picture of the hurricane. On the right side, you can see how flooded was the island, and the left you can see a before. And then I'm gonna start talking about different projects that we have been working on due to the hurricane. So a lot of non-for-profits have been involved directly to the project. We're talking about Direct Relief, Rocky Mountain Institute, Water Mission, Red Cross came to the island, and they have never been involved in solar projects. That's a new thing. Before, like Chris mentioned, here in Puerto Rico, we already have a mature market in renewable energy. We're talking about a 10-year market, and we have regulation. But before, everybody has been having grid-tied systems. nobody had batteries. So as Chris mentioned, when the hurricane hit, no power. So we had all these solar systems installed in the roof, and we were not using them. And we didn't have knowledge on the batteries. We're just starting here. We didn't have a lot of knowledge in that matter. But we started having training, and Blue Planet supported a lot of that in training the workforce, supporting the women, getting women into the industry. But here you can see different kinds of projects. One of the most, I think, most emblematic projects is on the water part. Here in Puerto Rico, a lot of communities that are not connected to the water utility company have an independent system that is run by the utility power, but if there's no power, there's going to be no water. So what happened is osteoporosis, a disease started happening in the middle of the island due to people started to taking showers, cleaning their clothes in the water streams, and that caused a lot of death in the island. So what we have been doing here, especially, we're putting solar and batteries to this non-process, we call it non-process water projects. So those communities will have water 24/7. And when we're talking about resiliency, we're just not putting solar panels and batteries. In some cases, we could use a generator, because our system can be charged by a generator. So it's a resilience is that if there's some problem with the battery or solar panel, then we have a backup. So that's part of the work that we're doing. Other things that we have been doing, it's with the banks. When they didn't have any power, there was no ATM function. So we didn't have able to have cash to buy food, the little food that we had in supermarkets, or just to buy the gas. So the banks are now getting ready, and they're putting batteries and solar on all their major banks. So if another hurricane comes, they will have power, and people can take out money. So that's another important thing that it's happening here. And another type of project that we have been working on, you can see on the right, is with Red Cross. What we're doing is we're powering schools that were used before as refuge during the hurricane, and we're building 2 microgrids, one to the refuge area and one to the cafeteria. Okay, and also we're acquiring some generators also in some sense. So if another hurricane comes, those refuge areas will be prepared. Here, the refuge areas were not working at all. The generators were not working. So people were leaving their homes to a refuge area, and probably sometimes it was worse than being in their homes. So those are the types of projects that have been happening. An important thing to mention here is that due to this storm, a lot of public policy and legislation have come to place. And this is very important to address this. A new law 17, got signed, where it's mandating Puerto Rico to be 100% renewable energy by 2050. And currently, as it right now, there has been a lot of process. Right now, there's a microgrid new regulation coming into place to do privately owned or do off-grid microgrids on commercial buildings. Also, the RECs market, the renewable energy credits regulation, it's right now, it's in a working process. A new interconnection agreement, it's coming into place. Also, energy efficient incentives. They're trying to put in energy efficiency incentives to incentivize people to be more energy efficient, put renewable energy. So those things have been helping out. The public policy is going to support us, and it's going to jumpstart also the renewable energy industry and support the economy. That's super important. We have been suffering with job losses for a long time, and it's very important to mention that. I want to address one last thing, is that here in Puerto Rico, people are rising. People are, are very, there's a lot of things. The cooperative movement is into place. Communities are working together. They're educating themselves. They wanna succeed. But also there's some, there's a bad thing here. We have been, there's people that we have been suffering a mental illness. We have been seeing a lot of suicides, a lot of situations, a lot of people leaving the island. So we're trying to support, and be involved with NGOs, not just with the energy part. There has been resiliency on food resiliency. Agricultures are preparing themselves. Hospitals, they're putting solar and batteries. Schools, banks, community centers. So from something bad, something good is happening. And I'm very excited to be part of this and be part of the company. Here's other pictures of projects that we have been working on with our partners, with the NGOs. And personally, NGOs have been the pillar for what's going on in Puerto Rico. The government, we're still waiting for funding that they have been mentioning for a long time. We have not received nothing yet. Supposedly, we're going to start receiving some funding for projects. We're talking about the first quarter of next year, but it's very important to mention again, if it was not for the non-for-profits, probably I will not be talking to you right now. So I'm very grateful for the non-for-profits to support us, to be part of what's happening in the communities. The communities have been very inspirational. So that's in general what's going on in Puerto Rico. I don't know if there's other pictures here of what we're doing, the microgrids, and with Red Cross in over 140 schools. You can see some pictures. We're installing our systems, and we're adding generators in some schools. So I don't know, Gregg, if there's any questions. Here's another project. This is Vieques Island with Mercy Corp. This is a cancer facility center where they do dialysis, and that project has been installed. Currently in Puerto Rico, the grid is unstable. Last week there was no power in my home, and I live near the tourist area, so we're in a working process. But I'm seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. It has not been easy, but we're very positive and grateful of what NGOs are doing here.
Excellent. Gaby, brother, thank you for that insight, and to just echo your point, the value and the power that the nonprofits exhibited during the rebuilding and also the disaster response there in Puerto Rico has been just unparalleled, anything I've ever seen in my life, where governments were tied by bureaucracy. You had groups like Rocky Mountain Institute, like Direct Relief, Water Mission, Red Cross coming in and just making stuff happen. And so it's a testimony to for sure to see a great thing happen. Gaby, one quick question. Yes. Can you just really quick just talk about how has this, tell me about the DNA of the people of Puerto Rico. How has this affected the way they look at themselves, their culture? How has that played in the part of the rebuilding process here?
I can tell, very, very sincere. Well, Puerto Rican people, Caribbean people are fun people, happy. It's aloha. People of Puerto Rico are very fun too. That's why I love this island, and I'm never gonna leave here. But personally, it affected a lot. We suffer a lot during that time, and personally, I can say my experience. The first week or so, I was one of them that wanted to leave the island. I was seeing a destruction and not seeing nothing, and just seeing a humanitarian crisis. Psychologically, it affected about a lot of people. Thank God that I switched that in my mind, and what I did, started supporting and use my pickup truck and start bringing food and water to communities. But you're still seeing a lot of people that are affected, and a lot of people that cannot tolerate this and have left the island. We have lost over 30% of the population, but you're seeing other people moving to the island, people that want to support the island, a lot of professionals, and we have good incentives also. Right now, there's good incentives. So promoting to people, and you're seeing also a movement of man, a lot of creativity. You know, you're seeing new restaurants, you're seeing people getting educated, people that didn't know about renewable energy, now they're involved. So you're seeing both things, but you're seeing more that people want to rise and get better. You know, that's the biggest percentage. But of course, there's also, like you say, a dark side, and you know, that's an ongoing process.
Excellent, Gabby. Thank you for sharing your heart, and for the heart of the people in Puerto Rico, and for making the best mofongo on the planet, brother. So, so great work there. Hey, I wanna introduce next again Justin Locke from Rocky Mountain Institute, and he's the senior director again of Empowering Clean Economies in the program. And these guys have been absolutely pivotal in the work they've been doing in Puerto Rico and in the Caribbean and even the Bahamas. They're just fantastic. So Justin, jump on in there, brother. Share with us what you're up to.
Thanks, Greg, and thanks to James for inviting me to be on this panel. So I think Rocky Mountain Institute's contribution to islands' energy resiliency really starts over 35 years ago in the early 80s. This is a time when industrialized countries in Europe, North America, elsewhere, were really investing in very large centralized generating facilities, mostly focused on fossil fuels and coal and nuclear. And at the time, our founder, Amory Levins, really looked at this from a different paradigm and said a soft pathway, a decentralized pathway where generation is closer to where customers consume that electricity is powered by renewable energy, is not only going to be a lower cost, but a safer alternative to centralized fossil fuels. And that is the original ethos and concept in which Rocky Mountain Institute was founded 35 years ago. Fast forward to 2014, and RMI's engagement in the Caribbean was really around that same premise, that the Caribbean has a set of unique ingredients that as a region don't exist anywhere else in the world, and that has a very high cost of electricity due primarily to its reliance on imported diesel, which a previous speaker spoke very clearly about, coupled with the fact that it has some of the best renewable energy resources in the world. And those ingredients combine to create the enabling business case for a high penetration renewable energy economy across multiple sectors. And really those same set of ingredients don't exist in a collective economy anywhere else in the world. And so RMI's initial engagement in the Caribbean in 2014, together with our partners at the Clinton Foundation, was really to prove out that business case, demonstrating from a technical, financial, economic, regulatory, utility business model perspective, how the energy transition will actually work in order to replicate that at a continental scale. So since 2014, RMI has been working with our partners at the Clinton Foundation and CARELEC, the Regional Utility Association, around three core pillars to address the risks and the challenges that are preventing that business case from being realized. And that is through techno-economic inclusive energy planning, essentially providing the techno-economic fact base to decision makers such as governments and utilities so that everyone is speaking from the same hymn sheet. What we found was that governments had their one set of facts and utilities had another set of facts. And in order to really make progress on the energy transition, you had to chart out the techno-economics and understand what projects were optimal for a specific jurisdiction. Second, we recognize that there's a lot of risk involved in these projects, particularly in the Caribbean, but across the developing world, in terms of political risk, currency risk, off-taker risk. And all these things need to be addressed and can't be addressed by one developer, by the private sector alone, that it needs organizations like Rocky Mountain Institute to come in and address those risks in order to crowd in private sector investment. And to date, we've deployed 12 clean energy projects totaling and leveraged over 200 million in private sector investment. Many of these projects were the first renewable energy projects at utility scale in most of the Caribbean countries where we're operating. And finally, we felt that in order for the Caribbean to really realize the energy transition and its vision for the energy transition, it has to work together, and it has to learn from each other's successes, but more importantly is each other's failures. So we worked with CARELEC, the Regional Utility Association, to create a community of practice that connects utilities across the region to learn from each other as they go through the energy transition, so that it's built from within and not from outside. So then fast forward to 2017, September of 2017, and we have two Cat 5 hurricanes hit within 2 weeks of each other, Irma and Maria. Never had happened before. And this event did two things. One, it made us realize, at least, that if the renewable energy transition is going to be successful, new renewable energy assets have to be designed to withstand Cat 5 winds. As you move from a centralized generating system to a decentralized system, you increase your exposure to natural hazards, but at the same time you reduce your risk. But these new assets have to be designed for the new reality. And at that point, we released a report called Solar Under Storm that provided the guidelines and standards that design and construct ground mount solar PV systems to withstand Cat 5 hurricanes. In addition to that, what it also exposed was that Caribbean countries had followed the industrial world in terms of its energy system architecture, with having centralized fossil fuel generation with long transmission distribution lines. And what we found is that this architecture is inherently vulnerable to disruption, particularly from high wind events like hurricanes. And obviously what we saw was devastation, not only in the major islands of Puerto Rico and others, but also in Dominica, British Virgin Islands, even Turks and Caicos and Bahamas. And we had the opportunity to work particularly with Puerto Rico and British Virgin Islands, and looking at what does resiliency actually mean in the energy sector. And for the first time, really analyzed at each segment of the grid, what is the optimal resiliency measure for an energy system to be more resilient. And obviously the hypothesis was around decentralized renewables would increase resiliency, but we had to prove that out. And so we did that in across several jurisdictions at a time when many were just saying underground everything. But what we realized is that there's many different options you have for building resiliency, including microgridding, decentralized segmenting the grid through battery storage. Undergrounding obviously is an option as well in urban areas, and even investing in energy efficiency closer to major load centers. In addition to that, and I think many of us really discovered during that process was that an economy is really centered around its services. And when those services, which are mostly grid tied in the Caribbean, lose power, that's when you have economic loss, and when you have loss of life, when people can't access these services like water treatment, like health facilities, telecommunications, etc. And that grid-tied microgrids at these critical facilities that can operate, that contribute to a lower cost of electricity for that critical facility during normal times of operation, but can operate independentally, detached from the main grid, and operate independently during times of disruption, is really about how you build resiliency. And so this concept around microgrids for critical facilities was really conceptualized and has gained traction across the region, which Rocky Mountain Institute has deployed in several different jurisdictions. One caveat, one anecdote there is that we were involved in identifying and designing a 1 megawatt solar car park canopy in Nassau, Bahamas. We designed and constructed that to withstand Cat 5 hurricane. When Hurricane Dorian hit the Bahamas, although it did not take a direct hit, it took an indirect hit on Nassau, so it did receive Cat 1 tropical storm force winds. Nassau lost power while that asset was producing power not only during the storm, but immediately afterwards when the rest of residents lost power. Now, RMI has been mandated and requested by the government of Bahamas and Bahamas Power and Light to support them in redesigning the electricity system on the Abaco Islands, in which we plan to take a critical facilities emphasis in building out the new generation and the new system architecture from those critical facilities, utilizing renewable energy designed to withstand Cat 5 hurricanes as the new electricity system, which we think will be a replicable model, not only for islands around the world, but continental scale as well. Thanks, Greg. Back to you.
Wow, that's an impressive piece. Justin, really appreciate your insights, and we've got quite a few questions that are coming in. And so, what I want to do here, and for the rest of the panel, is I want to open up, just pointed a couple questions to you, Justin, that people have asked, and then I want to open it up to the rest of the team there as well, to go ahead and answer, because you've all are speaking into this in a pretty direct way. So you mentioned. It's pretty phenomenal, Justin. You talked about a Cat 5 capable microgrid. Bro, how do you get people to even think about that? How do you talk to us about that?
And it's interesting. So what we did, and to better understand that, is actually we analyzed 5 systems that took a direct hit from Irma and Maria, and 3 that were destroyed and 2 that survived with minimal damage. To better understand what are the characteristics that require these systems to be built to Cat 5. And the main thing was thorough building, which was really is a small premium you have to pay for the increased resiliency of the system, which is essentially increased labor costs, that you actually have to put a bolt on the other end when you put the bolt through to clamp down these the panels. Obviously, you can't prevent debris impact, but you can prevent the lift. And so we outline in our report, Solar Under Storm, which you can download from our website, exactly step by step how to design and construct these systems to withstand Cat 5. Again, at a minimal cost premium of 5%, which obviously over the lifetime costs would save you significant amounts of money, given the fact that it's just a matter of time before these systems take a direct hit in the Caribbean region.
Absolutely. Great feedback. And thank you for that on here. And so I want to, Justin, so I want to ask a couple questions. People, I've got Mimi here who's created a great question. And really, I've seen the term now come up a couple times, energy sovereignty. I've seen people talk about, is there another way a community own projects that don't have to do with the utility? I've seen off-grid thrown out there. So I want to open this up just to the panel. Justin, if you want to start off in there. So what are you guys seeing? Why is the mindset of the islands is shifting away from more of the traditional utility way of doing business? Why are people wanting to shift away from that so much?
Yeah, I mean, I think, regardless of where you're at, I think there's always an inherent tension between the public and the utility. But I do think it's important to understand what your options are and the business models that will enable you to get there. You have to understand that the equitable benefits of the system are very important, right? And that not only the wealthy that can afford these systems benefit from these new technologies. And so there's really 2 extreme business models that can be realized, and every island really, depending on the techno-economics of that island, a number of different factors, including the solvency of the utility, you need to determine that and what is optimal and what's the optimal mix for a specific geography. But obviously, one extreme is that the utility owns everything. They own the solar panels on your roof, and they give you the same benefit of hosting that asset on your roof through a lease model that gives you a lower cost of electricity, which also enables the utility to buy in bulk, right? Which lowers the cost of the hardware and provides a more equitable distribution of the benefits, right? Because everyone benefits equally. The other option is that obviously that everyone generates their own power, right? And then the utility may rate base battery storage, where there's a battery storage unit in your neighborhood, and you buy firm power back from that battery when the sun is not shining, the wind is not blowing, right, at a fixed price. And then there's the hybrid of things in between and what that looks like. But I think there is no silver bullet here. It's important to understand the economics, and it's also critical to understand what is equitable for all income spectrums as you look to the 21st century grid.
Fantastic. Guys, jump on in there. I know there's a couple others that have some comments on this. Jump on in there, panel.
Gregg,
Go
sorry.
for it, Gaby.
Yeah, my experience here in Puerto Rico and with communities, it's very interesting. Like a lot of these non-for-profit projects, like example on the water project that we're putting solar and batteries on communities. We're not just giving away a free system to the community and just, let's see what happens. No, it's like Sandra says, we work directly with the community gets involved in the project, and the community needs to invest in the project with man hours, build something, so they have passion on the project because this will be theirs. And this system is well maintained, can be, they can have it for 30 years, even more. So that's something different from what we're accustomed here in Puerto Rico. The government just gives stuff for free and people don't appreciate it, and probably that's why they don't last long. But the good thing is that communities are engaged in the process and they're getting educated and they're very interested. They already know how to be without power for months, without water. They remember that. So they don't want to pass that. They don't want to suffer again. So I think important thing is to keep doing all the critical facilities in Puerto Rico and in all islands. In Puerto Rico, we just saw what happened here 2 years ago. It could happen to anywhere. You just saw a hurricane going to Ireland. That's Dorian. Like it's crazy what's happening in climate change. So it's very important the communities to get involved and to be prepared. That's the experience that we're seeing here in Puerto Rico, and I loved it. I love to see communities, the women, that we're working with Bosque Modelo, and it's a woman organization where we're training the women and we're getting involved the women. So we're helping them also to get jobs. So it's not just that we're building resiliency, creating jobs, and we're helping the environment. So it's awesome to work in those pillars.
And it's amazing how solar jobs are long-term jobs. So if you're teaching people to do operations and maintenance, or if you're just working with an already completely competent local subcontractor on operations and maintenance, you're creating long-term jobs, unlike fossil fuel extraction or mines projects, where it's a short-term job for a certain amount of time, and then people are just left with a devastated environment after that. So in terms of ongoing development, helping to train people up in solar is really healthy for the economy and for people's livelihoods. And I think it's hypercritical anywhere in the world that you're working that you have very strong local partners, and that you're helping to continually improve the capacity of those partners. I saw that there was a question about if partnerships are necessary. I can speak from the Haiti experience right now. The big missing piece in the Haiti market is financing. And so we see our role as just bringing in the missing components. So anything that already exists in the local market, we want to fortify and help lift up. But anything that doesn't exist, especially access to financing that makes sense for solar, we'll go out there and find it internationally and bring it to the market where it can help to uplift those local installation partners.
Yeah, I think there's great points about the building that local capabilities and capacity. When we first started working in Puerto Rico, everyone was used to putting on grid-tied solar and didn't have experience with batteries or microgrids. And as Gaby mentioned, Gaby and part of our technical team have been training around the island for the last almost 2 years, and have reached over 1,000 people that we've built that local capabilities with. And someone had asked about, is there utility pushback on these kind of things? And, I think what Gaby mentioned there of the community engagement and participation is absolutely key. And unfortunately, it's not all communities are that well organized or have those community structures and processes to be planning in advance. And I think what unfortunately we're seeing is that it's in a response to a disaster or a crisis that people start to actually work on these things. Certainly in Hawaii, you know, the utility fought pretty hard against these 100% clean energy policies. Now they see that it can actually be in their benefit now that they're having to do it. But I think both in Hawaii and in California and some of the Northeast of the US, progressive legislation and regulation is what gets the utility to change. A lot of the utilities are stuck in a very antiquated monopolistic business model, which is not really equipping them with great tools to deal with a whole new reality. And so we kind of have to get them to change. But I think we are, you know, but part of what we're doing is showing them that there's ways to do this that can be profitable. And as Justin mentioned, there's ways that the utility could actually be doing this. If we get the utilities on board, we could implement this change way faster. But it's hard to enroll their support in something that's so outside of what they even have a mindset for. So it's great that organizations like Rocky Mountain Institute are doing the convening and doing the hard work of getting some of that change. I do want to plug one other book from Omri Levins as well, which is called Reinventing Fire, Bold Business Solutions for the New Energy Era. So there's a bunch of good content out there. But looking at like how, you know, there's a lot of folks looking at now, how do we pave this way to really be shifting over to renewable energy? And it's going to take a lot of the work on the ground though, and making locally relevant solutions that engage the partners and create well-being locally.
Absolutely. We've got and a couple other questions that keep coming in. I mean, guys, keep the questions coming in. These are awesome. So as we're looking here and we're talking about, first of all, why is there even a need to do this, right? And we're trying to work with the utilities. It's not quite their business model. In specific, I want to talk about really, if we jump to Haiti really quick, Sandra, you good with that? I want to like get some of your thoughts. Like, what are you seeing there? Like, why isn't the utility taking care of the people? What's the problem? What are you facing there?
Well, the utility right now is bleeding about $200 million per year in subsidies for imported fossil fuels. So that's one drain on the utility. The other drain is that only about 50% of the electricity generated is actually collected on. So there's actually a word in Creole for stealing electricity, combelan. And so it's difficult for the utility being understaffed, not having enough revenues to be able to go out and collect on a lot of the electricity. You'll see crazy stuff, you know, where there's barbed wire hooked up to a pole that's being, you know, strung out for like a half mile out to a remote area because people don't have electricity. And so they're going to do whatever it takes to be able to charge up their phones or get lights for their kids to study. And so the utility ADH is a government-owned monopoly, and given that it has this complicated number of problems, it's been really challenging for them to upgrade aging infrastructure, to deal with you know, a lot of the poor power quality. So there's oftentimes extreme voltage spikes that happen across the grid, and so what we've seen in the last couple of months is that's been brewing for a few years is a partnership between ADH and the World Bank to help promote independently owned renewable energy microgrids. And so the World Bank put out a tender last year. 10 Power is a pre-approved vendor on this tender, and they will be launching another tender for independent power producers to come in and provide renewable energy microgrids for rural residential communities with a small subsidy. It's not a large enough subsidy to really make the microgrids independently viable. We actually did a webinar on that a few weeks ago on what needs to happen still for rural microgrids to be a business model in places like Haiti. So there's still a need for philanthropic and soft concessionary capital to come in, but there is a small subsidy that's being distributed through a Haitian government-run entity called ANARCE in partnership with the World Bank. So hopefully we'll be seeing a few more international partners participating in this upcoming tender because the last tender there were very few submissions for. So yeah, I think that there is a role for the utility to play. I hope that the utility of the future sees themselves more as a transmission and distribution provider and a data arbiter especially in places where they've had trouble with creating reliable electricity generation. There's a lot of potential for distributed renewable energy resources that are in communities, on commercial and industrial facilities. And then the utilities role, if they saw themselves as an energy distributor, would be to connect these different communities to keep tabs on how much electricity is being generated, and then potentially to do load balancing and have some grid scale energy storage. So if utilities just shifted the way that they see themselves, then there could be a really vital role for them in the up and coming ecosystem.
Interesting. So we're talking a bit about the utility in ways that they could help support this transition. And so, but what I want to do is bring it now back to the people, because at the end of the day, it's the people that are suffering in these island nations and communities. How typically I'm hearing about cost of systems, in unreliable systems. I'm hearing a bunch of challenges. Can you guys, just a panel, I want to open this up. Talk to me about the cost of these systems. How are these, in some areas are impoverished, others are not. How do we support our local community here with these system costs?
I can jump in on that. Fortunately, we've seen a decline year over year in the cost of photovoltaics. So the panels themselves have been coming down in price. And I'm really excited to see the traction that Blue Ion is getting, because what really needs to happen to unlock the market to make standalone renewable energy systems, microgrids, picogrids, nanogrids available to everyone is the cost of energy storage needs to come down. And so whether that takes more R&D, whether that takes drastically scaling business models, as we see the cost of energy storage becoming more attainable to bring the kilowatt hour price down, it will become more available to especially people who are really on the edge, fringe communities in these rural, remote areas.
And just to add on that, I think from a financial instrument perspective, both at utility scale and at the household, residential, commercial level, one instrument that can be leveraged in a very strategic way is guarantees, right? So at a utility scale, anytime you have an off-taker, most IPPs actually require in a PPA a sovereign guarantee to backstop a PPA, and most of these countries have very little fiscal space to tie up in backstopping a PPA. And so if we can find an alternative, a commercial guarantee that can backstop these PPAs that don't require a sovereign guarantee, you're going to see the market on the utility scale open up significantly. At the same time, it's the same philosophy with your local banks, right? Is that the financing terms are still too high for widespread adoption because the risks are too high at the residential and commercial level. And if we can find innovative backstops and guarantees to backstop these local banks so that they can lend at a much more competitive interest rate, you're going to see a significantly higher uptake in some of these loan schemes for both residential and commercial.
Yeah, financing has been an interesting nut to crack, and we've been working with some of the folks at RMI and some of our other partners to find ways to, in a way, like how do you de-risk a situation that most of the sources of capital are very conservative and very risk averse. And so even looking in Puerto Rico, where it's part of the U.S. and the same laws apply, it can be hard to get the creditors to want to go in with financing options. And so it's been, and that really, I think, is the key to unlocking greater adoption, because especially with these long-lasting systems, like Gaby mentioned, they can be 20 to 30 years in operation. If you can pay for it over that time, it can be cheaper than what you're paying for your utility bill on a monthly basis. And certainly places where you're paying for diesel fuel that's brought in from far away, you're going to be able to see some savings if you can get it down to unit economics that you can pay for over time. But it's, I think there's a lot to do there. And I think finding local partners where you can bring in local resources, like Justin mentioned, there's various financial tools that you can create a system around. But really, it takes some innovation and some pioneers to go in and be able to prove that something's possible. And a guy on my soccer team who's gone solar and battery on his house said, the economics were close enough. I know it's the right thing to do. And so there's also a sense of who's going to be the leader in paving this path. And so we're grateful for some of the nonprofits coming in with, with some of these funds to make things happen. In Hawaii, it's hard for us. We've talked to customers in Hawaii who they've got great solar adoption, but it's been much slower on the resilience with the energy storage and those microgrid architectures. And the thing is, they haven't been hit with a hurricane for over 30 years on the islands. And so it's kind of like out of mind. And now you see in Puerto Rico, the mindset is everything's going in with batteries and with this microgrid setup. But it's, again, trying to get that urgency, that sense of, okay, we really need to be doing this now, and getting the capital to get off the bench and get in play and get us towards solutions. So we need to apply the urgency to those policymakers, those financiers, and the regulators as well.
Yeah, to continue on that, if you look at where utility infrastructure came from, a lot of established utility infrastructure, the transmission and distribution lines, this really expensive long-term payback period infrastructure came from government bonds. And these had very low interest rates, like a 1% interest rate over a 50-year payback period. And in markets like Haiti, where there is no bond market to draw from, then I think it's really important for other sources of capital to come in. So for international development banks, for large-scale philanthropies, and individual philanthropists, we have seen over the past couple of decades wealth concentrating into the hands of fewer and fewer people. And I think it's the responsibility of those people to help ensure, that humanity is protected from climate change, especially those with larger carbon footprints. So what we're doing right now, and this is super new. This is kind of an announcement right now. 10 Power is launching a donor advised fund for renewable energy access. And what this means is that philanthropic investors can come and give a grant to this donor advised fund. And we're working with impact assets who can turn around that capital and use it for risk underwriting, like Justin was talking about, for riskier projects like microgrids in Haiti. And the beautiful thing from the grant maker's perspective is that instead of going towards a one-time project, if it's successful, it'll return to the fund. So it's evergreen. So it could have 10, 20, 50 times the impact because it's being used to underwrite more and more projects. And we want to make this paperwork for the donor advised fund open source so that any type of social impact enterprise can use it. And we're hoping to create this market mechanism to start unlocking capital so that these markets that don't have a lot of available government funding for microgrids can use it to underwrite renewable energy projects that are more private sector driven.
It's hard for me not to dance when you said that. that is fantastic news, creative ways of trying to work around this challenge so we can make a renewable energy affordable to the island nations. And some questions and thoughts that came in, again, back to the panel is one is, we're talking earlier, Sandra, you were talking about this. Gaby, you were hitting on this too. And even Abaco Island, Justin, you mentioned the cost of people running generators because already the grid is unreliable in a lot of these areas. And it's been that way for a long, long time. And so they're already used to running diesel generators because the grid fails all the time. And power is costing them 25 to 60 cents a kilowatt hour. This is insane. We can make power cheaper than that, can't we, just from renewable resources? I mean, are we there yet, or give me your guys' thoughts on that?
But,
I mean, I can jump in first. I mean, obviously, the economics on small-scale diesel generators versus renewables is very clear, right? I think it gets more complicated when you get into baseload power and larger systems, right? And the need for that. Obviously, to the point made earlier, as battery storage comes down, that's just going to become more and more affordable. But I think the main point here is that a diesel generator, when it's not being used, is a sunk cost, right? So that's an investment that is not giving you any return, right? Whereas a renewable microgrid, is lowering your operating costs, right? When at all times, right? Because it's lowering the cost of your electricity, coupled with the fact that when we talk about resiliency, the new future is that power is going to be disrupted, and as we saw in Puerto Rico, part of that disruption is that fuel supply is disrupted, and these diesel, these backup diesel systems and these other systems, I mean, they can't get the diesel from the port to the generating plant or to the backup generator, and that's when you get in the danger zone, right? And so having renewables not only, adds to your bottom line during normal times of operation, but from a resiliency perspective, particularly when it's designed appropriately, it could be life saving, and obviously, it reduces impact of economic losses during, these major events.
Jumping.
Yeah, I think we're seeing, oh, go ahead, Gaby.
Oh, it's okay. No, just wanted to mention, here in Puerto Rico, there's a lot of sun. We have our climate, it's 24/7. We're summer, so we already have the resource here. And when we're comparing like to the utility, we're buying expensive energy, not reliable. And then when you added that you have not been for months without power, how it's a non-brainer. It's a non-brainer to put batteries and solar. Prices have gone down in panels. In batteries, it's going to come eventually down. And it was fun to hear that the Nobel Prize on chemistry was given to scientists working on ion technology, the technology that we're working on. So there has been an interest globally on this, and all eyes have been on the islands, on what's happening in Puerto Rico, on Hawaii, in Bahamas, and everybody's watching what we're doing. And we would just need to replicate the good things that we're doing and just keep working, supporting with the NGOs and the communities.
Yeah. After Hawaii, Puerto Rico has the second highest electricity rates in the U.S. And so already, and especially now, so we've just also released our commercial product, which is, even though a lot of our existing product is being used in commercial applications, we've made a new product that's designed to make that simpler and easier. And in designing those projects, we actually model the energy costs for the building. So taking the actual load profile for a building and then modeling it out, and we can show return all the time with these. So if you're in a place where the energy is expensive or it's poor quality, then these systems will be able to pay for themselves. And some of our customers have, like Gaby mentioned, the idea of having continuity. It's kind of hard to put a price on that. Right. We have some commercial customers where the loss of productivity for their staff not being able to work because they have high paid engineers and they need access to servers. And if they lose power for half a day, the whole system's paid for itself. And so it doesn't take a lot for those to have a return. But I mean, we're even seeing with and in the energy markets, when you're on the grid, you have both the utility would charge both for the kilowatt hours of energy that you consume, as well as the maximum power that you have, or sometimes we call like a demand charge or a capacity charge. And so solar can help with both of those, and batteries can help with both of those as well. And so those are ways that we look at basically being able to do cheaper than the utility can. But the other thing that's happening is these technologies have gotten so good, we can actually provide better quality power than the utility can in many situations. So it's not just a question of cheaper, it's also the quality and the reliability of it.
Absolutely. So I'm so sad to say we've only got about 7 minutes, and the questions that are coming in are fantastic. All I got to say, James, we need to do this more often. So I want to just leave a couple thoughts here for the folks. Actually, I don't want to leave them. I want our panel to leave them. And I want you to, if you were to just communicate, if you each one of you got about a minute, just like what's your vision, what's your goal, how are we going to fix this problem? So let's start off with Sandra, because you just rocked it with the ukulele at the beginning. So sis, jump in there. Give us your 1 minute, just how are we going to change this world?
Thanks. Yeah. The question is how quick can we do it? We already have the technologies. We already have the business models. it's very clear. The places with the highest energy poverty are the places clustered around the equator with the highest solar generation potential. And so it's just a matter of scaling solutions fast enough. As we discussed on the panel, finance is one of the key pieces to unlocking this. Customers can use existing assets. I saw some comments about diesel generators in the questions. And so one of the things that we're doing is utilizing the diesel generator, sometimes for baseload if the customer has a really high baseload, always for failover. So in the case that there's a couple of cloudy days and rainy days in a row, utilizing that diesel generator, but adding solar and battery hybrid systems on top of it to make sure that customers can transition. And one of the beautiful things about solar is that it's modular. So you can start out with something that the customer can afford that's equal to or lower what they're currently paying for their diesel generator with financing on a month-by-month basis. And then you continue to add solar on top of it. You know, if you're building a coal-fired or a gas-fired plant, you can't add capacity, you know, step by step. So the cool thing about solar is it can grow with your business as your business grows, or grow with your community as your community grows. So staying in line with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, making sure that renewable energy is lifting all boats, that it's creating prosperity and regenerative economics and ecosystems for all is really the path to the future. And the big question is, how fast can we do this? Let's reverse climate change together.
Awesome. Awesome. Gaby, jump in there, brother.
Hey, Gregg, that's simple. You know, do what we're doing here. You know, install batteries, solar in all critical facilities. We have seen what happened here in Puerto Rico and how this has been helping. So my recommendation is put solar batteries in all hospitals, schools, community centers, banks. Be prepared, and not just Puerto Rico, all the islands, and engage the community. Community is very important. You know, communities need to get engaged in these projects, keep educating themselves. We need more women in the industry. And also there's an important toolkit. It's called the PREnergyToolkit.com. And my recommendation, that's something that Rocky Mountain and Resilient Power built. That's an important tool where communities can just log in and do their reports. You know, they can submit a report if they need what type of resiliency they need. They need data information. So I suggest to everyone to log into our webpage. It's with valuable information. So at the end, it's just keep supporting each other, you know, supporting the NGOs. We need the government involvement, of course, but it has been a little bit difficult to have them involved. But NGOs and communities just, you know, keep working together.
Excellent. Gaby Perez for president of Puerto Rico 2020. Anyway, Justin, brother, jump in there really quick, man. Why don't you share your closing thoughts?
Sure. My last little blurb here is that I think, as we all know very well, islands are really on the front lines of the negative impacts of climate change, right? Dorian just reminded us that just 6 weeks ago when it hit the Bahamas, that the island countries around the world are highly vulnerable, as well as coastal communities. At the same time, they're moving faster than anyone else to create resilient renewable energy systems, and really demonstrating that change is possible. And the solutions are there. We just need to scale. So there's an incredible story here around victim to solution provider that really and really flipping that script that islands are demonstrating, you know, that change is possible to the rest of the world, and they hold an incredible moral authority, you know, in the international arena to drive these solutions at scale.
Fantastic. Thank you. Christopher, go for it, brother.
All right. So I want to start off by addressing one of the questions that come up there. Is seeing is believing. And asking for some live system data here. So I want to show you just real quick from our founder Hank's house, which has been off grid over 5 years now. This is the live data off his system. And so you can see he's done over 1,000 cycles on the battery, almost 1,100 cycles. He's charging up now. Sun's come up in Hawaii, and those panels are cranking and filling that battery back up. But you can see his usage pattern here being totally off grid. The battery charges up each day and then discharges each night. So that's what it looks like over the week. So, but I want to just comment also on the fact that, like, you know, part of this is, it is not a technology challenge here, right? We are looking at political will and social organization and mobilization. And so what Puerto Rico has been able to do in becoming now the experts on this, right? Now Puerto Rico will have knowledge, and Puerto Ricans will be out there actually teaching the other islands how to do this. And so I think my vision is that everyone on this call is now educated and empowered around renewable energy and microgrids and energy storage, and they become activated in their communities, and they start to influence and push for change, because we need, as Sandra says, how fast can we get this done? We need everybody activated and out there making it happen. Mahalo, Gregg.
Wow, what a panel. What an awesome time. I'm so encouraged. I'm so encouraged. There's goosebumps right there. I'm so encouraged, guys. So appreciate all the insights, the wisdom. Please connect with those who are on the panel. Thank you for coming in today, taking your time out of your busy days. Please message us if you have questions about how we can support you in your islands. Everybody on this panel is that's what we do, and we want to support you, bless you. And again, mahalo nui loa for signing in today. For all of our panelists, I want to just say, Sandra, thank you so much. Justin, Chris, and Gaby, and James, brother, for putting this together. You are a rock star, and we're so grateful that you did this. So hui ho, as we say in Hawaii, until we meet again. Bye now.
Thanks, everyone.